The African Deep Dive podcast is brought to you by the African Technology Policy Studies Network. This podcast explores how science, technology, and innovation can drive sustainable development and global inclusion in Africa.
All right, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling, a really massive problem. It's one of those things that has just huge implications for, really the whole planet, but especially for the African continent. Yeah. We're talking deforestation.
Yeah, it's a crisis, really. You start thinking about what that means, right? Losing biodiversity, soil just washing away, climate change kicking into overdrive. It's disrupting, it's completely upending the lives of countless communities who depend on those forests.
It's overwhelming to even think about how to even begin to monitor something so vast, so spread out, so remote in many cases. The old ways of doing things just don't cut it, right?
And that's exactly where, this is where the whole idea of AI starts to get really interesting.
Yeah, because it feels like one of those areas where technology, when it's used the right way, can really make a difference.
Right. It's not just hype. We're talking about fundamentally changing how we monitor the environment. Think about the data. We're talking about huge, massive data sets. AI can just crunch through that stuff with incredible speed and with amazing accuracy.
So we're talking about getting near real-time information on what's happening in these forests.
Exactly. And that means being able to act faster, being able to protect those forests much more effectively.
So that's what we're diving into today. We're talking about the very specific, the nuts and bolts of how AI is being used to detect deforestation, specifically in Africa.
Right. With all its unique challenges and all its incredible ecosystems.
And we'll cover, everything from the techniques they're using to, what kind of data they feed these AI systems, what projects are already working, the challenges that are still out there.
And of course, you can't forget about collaboration. It's absolutely key.
And maybe even get a glimpse of what the future might hold. So let's start big picture. How is AI changing the game when it comes to real-time deforestation detection?
Well, you got to start with the foundation, right? Remote sensing. Satellite imagery, that's how we get that broad view, that constant eye on these vast forest areas. We need that for any kind of large-scale monitoring, especially on a continent like Africa.
And AI is like the brain that makes sense of all that imagery.
Exactly. AI algorithms can analyze how the forest cover changes over time in these satellite images.
Yep.
It can detect deforestation as it's happening.
So we're not talking about waiting months or years to see the damage.
Nope. We're talking about days, sometimes even hours. And what's really cool is we've got so many different sources of satellite data now. You've got the stalwarts, Landsat, Sentinel, but then you've got all these commercial satellite companies coming online.
And each one's a little different.
Exactly. Different levels of detail, different wavelengths of light they capture, different revisit rates. And AI can handle that. It can use it all, bring it all together.
It's like having a whole army of eyes in the sky.
Exactly. And what's even more impressive is it can pick out those subtle changes, things that a human analyst might miss. But that could be early warning signs.
So the AI is acting almost like a superpowered analyst. Now I keep hearing about this thing, deep learning. How does that fit into the picture?
Deep learning, particularly these things called convolutional neural networks, CNNs, they've really become central to how we analyze these complex images, whether it's from satellites or drones. It's like the AI is learning to see.
So it's not just like matching pixels. It's actually recognizing patterns.
Yeah. It starts with basic shapes, edges, and then it builds up, to more complex features like leaves, tree canopies, and then boom, it can recognize a whole area that's been deforested.
Yeah.
And it does all this automatically.
That's incredible. So it's actually learning what a healthy forest looks like and what a deforested area looks like.
Yeah. And it's looking at those subtle differences in the light that's reflected, spectral signatures, those unique fingerprints that tell us what kind of vegetation is there.
So these CNNs, are they better at spotting deforestation than the older ways of analyzing images?
Oh, yeah. Way better. They can handle way more data, way more complexity. And this is especially helpful in Africa, where we might not always have tons of perfectly labeled training data.
Because to train an AI, you need to show it lots of examples, right?
Right. But there's this technique called transfer learning. It's you can take an AI that's already learned a lot about forests, maybe from another part of the world, and then fine-tune it with a smaller data set from Africa.
So it's like giving it a head start. That's really smart. Now, you mentioned that AI can do more than just say, forest or no forest. What else can it do?
Yeah, so that basic classification is just the starting point. The really cool stuff comes with these more advanced techniques, like object detection. There's this algorithm called YOLO, you only look once, kind of a catchy name.
I like it.
So what it does is it can actually identify and count individual trees in an image. Yeah, so we can monitor not just these like massive clear cuts, but we can see subtle changes in forest density, which could be a sign that something's wrong.
Like an early warning system.
Exactly. And then there's image segmentation. This is where we divide the image into different regions based on what kind of vegetation is there. It's like color coding the forest.
So we can see like how the mix of species is changing.
Exactly. Or if there's encroachment from, agriculture or other land uses. So we're getting a much richer picture of what's happening.
It's like instead of just seeing the forest, we're seeing all the trees. And I'm guessing this helps us understand the ecological impact of deforestation in a more nuanced way.
Oh, absolutely. And the really exciting thing is AI is always evolving. There are all these new techniques on the horizon.
Ooh, like what?
Well, predictive analytics, for one. This is where AI can actually forecast where deforestation might happen in the future.
So instead of just reacting, we could prevent it.
Exactly. By analyzing past data like land use patterns, population density, infrastructure development, where roads are being built, AI can identify those areas that are at high risk.
That's a game changer.
It is. And then there's acoustic monitoring. This is super cool. Imagine placing sensors in the forest that can listen for the sounds of illegal logging.
Like what? Chainsaws.
Exactly. Or logging trucks. And AI can analyze that audio data in real time, send alerts to the authorities if it hears something suspicious.
That's like giving the forest its own ears.
Right. And it's especially helpful because it can detect things that you might not be able to see from above, if it's happening under the canopy.
So we've got these eyes in the sky, and now we've got ears on the ground.
And we're just scratching the surface. AI is opening up so many possibilities.
It's really exciting. But all this sophisticated tech, it needs good data to work, right? What kind of data are we talking about?
You're absolutely right. The quality of the data is everything. It's the fuel that makes the AI engine run. And for forest monitoring, it all starts with satellite imagery.
Okay.
And it's not just any satellite imagery, right? It's about choosing the right imagery for the job. The different wavelengths of light or spectral bands that the satellites capture, those are crucial.
So like some satellites are better at seeing certain things.
Exactly. Like some might be better at seeing healthy vegetation. Others might be better at distinguishing different types of land cover.
And then there's the resolution, right? How much detail you can see.
Exactly. Some satellites like Planet, they can get down to like 3-meter resolution. So you can actually see individual trees in many cases.
Wow.
And then there's the temporal frequency, how often the satellite revisits the same spot. You need that to see how things are changing over time.
So it's about finding the right balance between all these factors.
Exactly. And AI can help us with that too, figure out which data is most useful for a particular task.
That's really clever.
Yeah.
So satellites give us the big picture.
Yeah.
But what about getting up close and personal with the trees? I know drones are becoming really popular for environmental monitoring.
Yeah, drones are amazing. They can get us that super high resolution data, the really fine grained detail. We're talking about resolutions down to like fractions of a centimeter per pixel.
Wow.
Yeah, with tools like Morpho Drone ID, you can do some amazing stuff. Identify individual tree species, monitor the growth of seedlings, assess the overall health of the forest.
Just like having a magnifying glass for the forest.
Exactly. And drones are super flexible. You can deploy them whenever, wherever you need them.
That's a huge advantage, especially in remote areas. But I imagine there's still a gap between what the AI sees from above and what's actually happening on the ground.
Absolutely. And that's where ground level data comes in. It's absolutely essential. You need that boots on the ground perspective to validate what the satellites and drones are seeing.
So it's like a reality check for the AI.
Exactly. And that ground truth data, it could be photos, tree measurements, ecological surveys, all that stuff helps the AI learn to interpret the patterns it's seeing from above.
So it's like teaching the AI what to look for.
Exactly. There are some great tools out there to help with that, like Morpho's Seedling Picture ID. It makes it really easy for people in the field to collect that crucial data.
That's awesome. So we've got the eyes in the sky, the boots on the ground. There's a lot to unpack.
There is a lot to unpack, and we'll pick up right there in the next part of our deep dive.
You're listening to the African Deep Dive podcast. We would love to hear from you. Share your thoughts, suggestions, and comments via social media or email. Thank you for tuning in and stay with us for more insightful conversations.
Now let's talk about those ears in the forest again. How does acoustic data actually help us monitor deforestation?
So acoustic monitoring is especially powerful for detecting illegal logging.
Yeah.
You've got these devices like Rainforest Connection's Guardians. They're placed high up in the canopy, listening 24/7.
And what are they listening for?
Anything suspicious? Chainsaws, trucks, heavy machinery, the sounds of illegal logging operations.
AI can pick those sounds out from all the other forest noises.
Oh yeah, it's amazing what AI can do with audio data. And when it detects those sounds, it can automatically send an alert to the authorities.
So they can respond quickly and hopefully stop the illegal logging before too much damage is done.
Exactly. And the beauty of it is, it can detect activity that's happening under the canopy, where you might not be able to see it from above.
That's so clever.
Hmm.
It's like a hidden security system for the forest. Now, I'm guessing the environment itself can also give us clues about deforestation, right?
You bet. There are all sorts of other sensors we can use to get valuable environmental data. You know, the Internet of Things, all these connected devices that can measure things like temperature, humidity, soil moisture.
So we can get a really holistic view of what's going on.
Exactly. And when you combine that data with the imagery, you can start to see patterns, correlations.
Like maybe a sudden spike in temperature in a certain area combined with smoke in the satellite image, that could indicate a fire.
Exactly. AI can learn to recognize these complex patterns, these subtle clues, and that makes our deforestation detection even more accurate.
It's like giving the forest a voice, letting it tell us what's happening. So with all this amazing technology, what's the current state of play? What tools and projects are actually being used in Africa right now?
Well, there's a lot happening, and it's really encouraging to see. One of the biggest platforms out there is Global Forest Watch, or GFW. It's run by the World Resources Institute.
And what does it do?
They use satellite imagery and AI to monitor deforestation all over the world, including Africa. They provide near real-time data, deforestation alerts, tons of information on forest ecosystems.
It's like a global dashboard for forests.
Exactly. It's a really valuable resource for everyone involved in conservation.
And are there projects that are specifically focused on predicting deforestation? Getting ahead of the problem.
Yeah, there's a really cool one called Forest Foresight, developed by WWF Netherlands. They piloted it in Gabon with great success.
And how does it work?
They use machine learning to analyze all sorts of data, satellite images, environmental data, to predict where illegal logging and deforestation are most likely to occur.
So they can warn people in advance.
Exactly. And it's been really effective. They've managed to prevent a lot of deforestation in Gabon.
That's amazing. I love the idea of shifting from reaction to prevention. Are there any projects outside Africa that are doing interesting things that we could learn from?
Absolutely. There's a project called Project Guacamaya. It's focused on the Amazon rainforest, but it's got some really relevant insights for Africa.
Like what?
Well, it's a big collaboration involving universities, NGOs, tech companies like Microsoft and Planet Labs and the Colombian government. They're using satellites and AI for real-time monitoring, and they're even integrating bioacoustics.
So they're listening to the rainforest as well.
Yeah, they're getting a really comprehensive view of what's happening. It's a great model for how we could approach conservation in Africa.
And what about the tech companies themselves? Are they developing any tools specifically for deforestation monitoring?
Oh, yeah. There are companies like FlyPix AI that offer these AI-powered geospatial analysis services. They can customize solutions for object detection, change tracking, all that stuff.
So they're making AI accessible to conservation organizations.
Exactly. And then there's Rainforest Connection, RFCX. They're doing amazing work with acoustic monitoring. They've got systems deployed all over the world, listening for the sounds of illegal logging.
They're really dedicated to protecting those rainforests. And what about the big tech giants? Are they getting involved?
They are. Microsoft, for example, they've got their AI for Good Lab and other initiatives that are supporting climate resilience and sustainability in Africa.
So they're not just focused on profits. They're actually trying to use their technology for good.
Exactly. And they're working with local organizations to make sure their efforts are relevant and effective.
That's great to hear. And what about the research world? What are academics doing to advance this field?
Research is critical. Universities like the University of Wageningen, they're using AI to analyze what happens to the land after deforestation.
So trying to understand the long-term impacts.
Right, exactly. And that helps us develop better policies, better strategies for preventing deforestation in the first place.
So it's a multi-pronged approach, We've got international organizations, tech companies, researchers all working on this, but I'm guessing there are still some big challenges.
Oh, absolutely, there are. One of the biggest is data. It's the fuel for AI, but it can be hard to come by, especially in Africa.
In what way?
Well, high-resolution satellite imagery, it can be expensive. And then there's the issue of labeling the data. Telling the AI what's what. That's a time-consuming, expert-driven process.
So it's a bottleneck.
It is. And then there's the issue of, well, AI models aren't perfect. They can make mistakes.
But what kind of mistakes?
Well, false positives, where the AI thinks it's seeing deforestation when it's not. Or false negatives, where it misses actual deforestation.
So we have to be careful about trusting the AI too much.
We have to be aware of its limitations. And we have to constantly work to improve its accuracy, its reliability. And that takes research, it takes validation, it takes time.
And all of this takes money, right? Funding is always an issue.
It is. And you need a lot of computing power to run these AI systems. High-performance computers, cloud infrastructure, it all costs money.
And internet access, right? That's still a challenge in many parts of Africa.
It is. And then there's the whole issue of the environment itself. Cloud cover, for example. That can really mess with satellite imagery.
So if it's cloudy, you can't see the forest.
Not very well, no. And while there are other technologies like SAR, synthetic aperture radar, that can see through clouds, they're more complex to use.
So we have to be adaptable, use the right tools for the job. Now, you mentioned earlier that some AI models can be a bit of a black box. What did you mean by that?
Right, so some of the more complex AI models, especially deep learning models, they can be really good at making predictions. But it's not always clear why they made that prediction.
So we don't know how they're thinking?
Exactly, and that can be a problem, especially when it comes to something as important as deforestation. We need to be able to trust the AI to understand its reasoning.
So we need more transparency.
Exactly, and that's why there's this growing field of research called explainable AI, or XAI. It's all about making AI more transparent, more understandable.
So we can see what's going on under the hood. Well, this has been a really eye-opening discussion. We've talked about the amazing potential of AI, but also the very real challenges. So how do we move forward? How do we make sure AI is used effectively to combat deforestation?
Collaboration is key. We need to bring together governments, NGOs, AI experts, everyone who has a stake in this.
So it's about breaking down those silos, working together.
Exactly. Governments, they set the policies, they enforce the laws. NGOs, they have the on-the-ground expertise, they understand the local communities. And AI experts, they bring the technical skills.
And it sounds like data sharing is going to be really important.
Absolutely. We need to make sure that everyone has access to the data they need. And that means having standardized formats, interoperable platforms, all that good stuff.
So we can all speak the same language, so to speak. And of course, none of this is going to happen without funding. Where's that going to come from?
Funding is always a challenge, but there are a lot of potential sources. Governments are starting to realize the importance of this, and there are international organizations like the African Development Bank, the World Bank, the Green Climate Fund.
And don't forget about philanthropic foundations. There are a lot of foundations that are really committed to environmental conservation.
Exactly. And we need to make sure that funding is targeted, that it supports those interdisciplinary collaborations that are so crucial.
So if we can get the collaboration, the data sharing, the funding all aligned, what kind of impact can AI actually have on deforestation? How can it actually help us protect these forests?
Well, AI can give us the information we need to make better decisions, to enforce the laws more effectively.
So we can move from reacting to deforestation to actually preventing it.
Exactly. We can identify those high-risk areas, we can deploy resources more strategically, we can catch illegal logging operations in the act.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's not just about the technology, is it? It's about the people.
You're absolutely right. We need to build capacity within Africa. We need to train local experts who can use these tools, who can develop new solutions.
So it's about empowerment, giving African communities the skills and knowledge they need to protect their own forests.
Exactly. That's how we make this sustainable in the long term.
Well, this has been a truly inspiring conversation. I'm feeling hopeful, but also a little overwhelmed by the complexity of it all. If there are any young African researchers listening who are passionate about this, who want to make a difference, what advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, I'd say go for it. This is such an exciting field to be in, and there's so much need, so much potential to make a real impact.
What skills should they focus on?
You need a good foundation in AI, obviously, machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, but you also need to understand remote sensing, GIS, environmental science.
So it's really interdisciplinary.
It is. And don't forget about data analysis, programming, Python, R. Those are essential skills.
And what about education? Are there good programs in Africa that focus on these things?
Oh, yeah. More and more universities are offering degrees in computer science, data science, remote sensing, all that. Look for those programs, look for scholarships, look for research opportunities.
And what are some of the big questions, the big research areas that they could focus on?
Oh, there are so many. Developing more robust AI models for African forests, making AI more explainable, more transparent, integrating different types of data, imagery, acoustic data, all of that.
And it's important to collaborate, right?
Absolutely. Network with other researchers, attend conferences, join professional organizations, and reach out to NGOs, government agencies, international organizations. Collaborate with them, learn from them.
So it's about building those bridges, connecting the dots. This has been such a fascinating deep dive. It's clear that AI has the potential to truly revolutionize how we protect forests, not just in Africa, but around the world.
It does. But we have to be realistic about the challenges. We need to be smart about how we use this technology, and we need to work together.
We need the collaboration, the data sharing, the funding, the capacity building. We need it all.
We do. But if we can get it right, if we can harness the power of AI and human ingenuity, I truly believe we can make a difference. We can protect these precious forests for generations to come.
On that hopeful note, we'll leave you with this thought. What other environmental challenges could benefit from this kind of approach? How can we use AI to create a more sustainable future for everyone? Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.
Thank you for listening. Join us every Thursday for more insightful conversations.